different industry segments. So it'll be perhaps easier for the telecom operators to try and monetize, or first of all, build up a business case that would allow them to monetize 5G, because they'll be able to have better discussion, or mature discussion with the medical industry.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, Paul. And it's really a great example on healthcare and basically how 5G also can help that society benefits during a crisis like we see it now due to the coronavirus, how it can help. That's a very powerful example for sure. Everyone talks basically about the speed, and you mentioned video downloads, comparing 5G, 4G, or even 3G. This is basically what public mainly talks about. But when you would explain it to the public, what is really the value of 5G? What's beyond speed really adding the value for the people using it in the future, as it is not only the download speed of videos, for sure.
Yes, yes. So if I was to give you, so the example I just gave you just now was about the uplink, so user-generated content. So the first thing is, this period has a lot more, I'll say a lot more people who are aware of behavioral change because of being, I'll say, confined, yes? So they are being more creative. They are uploading more information, yes? And more video-based content. So the first thing is the behavior. If it was 5G, I'll give you an example. We're on a business call now, but can you imagine if there are limited resources, then perhaps the person next to me is playing games, or somebody in the next room or in the next house are playing games or consuming a different type of service. So would you want education, business, or emergency services like health-related things to be competing for the limited resources in a 4G network? That's the first thing that your listeners and viewers should consider. In 5G, we're able to slice the network. So that means we can give the gamers a slice. We can give the health industry a slice. We could give the businesses a slice. So you could guarantee that the quality of service, you can guarantee that the experience would be better. That's the first thing that you could consider as a consumer, yes? So this behavioral change will allow you to do those things. One thing we've never really talked about has been energy. And when we first developed 5G, yes, we were talking about speed, we were talking about latency, we were talking about massive connections. But can you imagine, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the reasons why 5G is more attractive is because of its efficiency. It has a very large capacity. So that means for a similar price and for a similar power consumption, you get more for the same. So if you have 20 times more capacity from 5G compared with 4G, and the power consumption is similar, and you need to satisfy demand, largely video demand that I mentioned, then if you continue to build 4G networks, you would double the carbon footprint of the planet. Yeah, and that's pretty significant over about 5 or 6 years. But if you deployed it using 5G networks, then the opportunity under the best case scenario is to flatten that out. And that's something good for the planet, right? That's probably the next hottest topic, apart from security in Europe is really talking about energy. And of course, globally, everybody's talking about climate change. So that's a primary, I'll say a primary target. So 5G networks, just by building the networks, you can, contribute to limiting climate control. That's before the downstream effects of 5G in the industries. And as I mentioned, things like health and education. But transport will also be improved through the opportunities that 5G have. Then, as you move into renewables, there's hundreds of thousands of, and probably now millions of solar panels together with wind turbines. That's a little bit like a manufacturer. They all have moving parts, not the solar panels, but certainly the wind turbines have moving parts. And of course, that needs maintenance and predictive maintenance, and you need more sensors. So there's a lot of opportunity here for better interaction, more of a real-time monitoring, real-time measurement, including supply and demand, those sorts of things. You have a primary effect, I'll say a direct effect of 5G in climate control, which is reducing as an industry the consumption of energy. But you have flow-on effects in each of the industries in terms of efficiencies, which translates to energy consumption or reduction in energy consumption.
Well, Paul, I think this is very insightful, and thanks for sharing that you can prioritize the data what you process in 5G in a much different way than today, and also the sustainability, the impact what it has on sustainability by being much more efficient in using the data. That's very, very impressive, and probably something on the technology side not everyone is aware about it right now. So thanks for that. So final question on my side. So I think everyone is looking forward now getting access to 5G. So we are still a little bit behind in seeing that all the phones, the mobiles will have the capability also being 5G ready. But when you look first on the rollout of it and looking at the telecommunication industry, looking at all the different industries also then adapting it, but also the government. So what would you expect to get a better process and be faster in the rollout and in the readiness by using 5G? What would you wish getting from government and the telco industry? Let's start with these two.
Sure. So you've sort of asked a little bit of a bridging question in a way. I'll say that because you said at the beginning, it was a bit slow, or I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but let me just tell you a couple of things. Earlier last year, I can remember our CEO, Mr. Ryan Ding, he made a comment. He said, it will be sometime this year in 2020 before we see a $300 handset, a 5G handset. But it happened last year. So he announced to the world that he was wrong. We were all wrong. We all thought it would take a little bit longer before we got a $300 handset. So that's important, because if you look at 4G, how long it took to get a certain market share or market adoption was largely driven by the ecosystem, and that's very sensitive to price because it's a B2C market, yes, and people obviously price sensitive. So the first one is, the good news is that you do have sub $300 phones already, not from one manufacturer, from a number of manufacturers. So that means the ecosystem can be very mature. The second one is you're seeing the products themselves are coming out with more, I'll say, innovation. We launched a product a year ago and it was 45 kilos, 40 kilos, sorry. We've launched it in UK only a couple of months ago, and the second generation is 25 kilos. The first one consumed 30% more power. This one consumes 30% less energy, the same as 5G. So the price, the size, the volume, the capability is getting higher, but all those other things are improving. So that's the second thing that's happened in just 12 months. But now you're saying, well, what's my wish? My wish would be two things. The first one is that governments understand that 5G is a transformative opportunity. Okay, it's transformative because it improves the position of a telecom operator, which quite frankly in the last probably 3 years is undergoing a lot of pressure in terms of revenues flatlining, profits not increasing, etc. So that makes investment very, very difficult. And remember, it's a platform. So the platform for transformation, I gave you an example. By building 5G networks, they're more efficient. That contributes positively to energy and carbon emissions. It has a platform for transformation in industries. So if you want those three things to happen, you need the right, I'll say, incentives. You need the right economic climate. And the first one is for telecom regulators to understand that if you charge too much for spectrum, there's less money to spend on equipment. Of course, Huawei wants that. That's of course natural. It's all called business. But the principles are clear. The more money that you charge for spectrum, the less money there is and the less incentive there is for telecom operators to roll out. So the first wish, and you're seeing some governments around the world that understand this, they're reducing the price of spectrum. They're encouraging operators to build more rural networks in exchange for this. So it's a sort of a carrot and stick solution. But I would also encourage governments to understand the value of things like collaboration in sharing facilities, particularly lampposts, particularly power poles. They're not owned by necessarily government institutions. Some are private, some are different companies. And to try to have this collaboration, because if you can make it simpler and cheaper and easier to roll out and deploy networks, both rural and urban, then you get this downstream effect where you can have connected ambulances or manufacturing or transport facilities, or millions of things connected, which will improve and digitalize life, both business and also consumer life. So this collaboration would be the second thing that I would love the industry to bring together. And the third one is really for the telecom operators themselves to be a little bit more creative, to change the DNA from building a tower and selling SIMs to better collaboration. How can, as an enabler, a platform enabler 5G, how can they better transform industries like health, like education, like manufacturing and transport, etc. So they're probably the three wishes that I have for 2020.
Awesome. Paul, many thanks. This was very insightful, getting a little bit more insights about the capabilities, the power, what 5G can do. Very impressive. And also sharing some practical examples. And I hope really we will get 5G as fast as possible, because we all need it. And the sustainability aspect in particular, I like it very much. That's also a much more efficient way in how we communicate and process the data, which is absolutely essential for the economy. And we see it right now in a time of a crisis, but also when the economy comes back. We all hope we can benefit very soon from the 5G technology. Paul, many thanks for the interview. Highly appreciate your time. And yeah, looking forward also next time meeting you in person at one of the conferences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, Marcel.